Speakers, publishers, consultants, coaches, and info marketers unite. The Speaking of Wealth Show is your roadmap to success and significance. Learn the latest tools, technologies, and tactics to get more bookings, sell more products, and attract more clients. If you're looking to increase your direct response sales, create a big-time personal brand, and become the go-to guru, the Speaking of Wealth Show is for you. Here's your host, Jason Hartman.
Welcome to the Speaking of Wealth Show. This is your host, Jason Hartman, where we discuss profit strategies for speakers, publishers, authors, consultants, coaches, info marketers, and just go over a whole bunch of exciting things that you can use to increase your business, to make your business more successful and more passive and more automated and more scalable. So we will be back with a great interview. Be sure to visit us at speakingofwealth.com. You can take advantage of our blog, subscribe to the RSS feed, and many other resources for free at speakingofwealth.com. And we will be back with a great interview for you in less than 60 seconds.
Now's your opportunity to get the Financial Freedom Report. The Financial Freedom Report provides financial self-defense in uncertain times, and it's your source for innovative, forward-thinking investment property strategies and advice. Get your newsletter subscription today. You get a digital download and even more. Go to jasonhartman.com to get yours today.
It's my pleasure to welcome Darren LaCroix to the show. He is a keynote speaker, author, and comedian, so it's great to have a funny guy on the show. And I tell you, this is really one of the most important skills for any speaker, and I've got to say, I'm not great at it. I tell a few funnies here and there, but I tell you, you can conquer the world with humor. And Darren, it's great to talk to you. Welcome to the show.
Delighted to be here. Thanks for having me, Jason.
Well, good. You're coming to us from Las Vegas today. I guess my first question really, Darren, would be, is humor something that is inborn? Some people have it and some don't. Or is it a learned skill?
Well, that's a perfect question. And I've actually made it my life's mission to dispel the myth that most people do believe you're born funny or you're not. And I am living proof. In my keynotes, I actually show a video clip of my first time on stage and how bad it is. And how within 9 years, I actually went on to win the World Championship of Public Speaking, got 18 laughs in 7 minutes.
Wow. Okay, so that's pretty good.
Come a long way. But it truly is something that can be learned, but there really is that myth, and I understand the myth. I believed the myth. There are people who are naturally funny, and just like you, Jason, I hate them too.
Yeah,
because
I have a friend. He does a lot of public speaking, and on or off the platform, the guy's hilarious. I mean, he's just a funny guy, and I don't know how I could learn that from him. It's just the way he is. What are some of the things people need to do to be more humorous?
Well, part of the problem is that people like him, we all know someone who's naturally funny, and it's you envy them, and it's understandable. But they've actually been learning it their whole life. And they've been around funny, they think funny. Would you agree, Jason, that funny people think differently? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I would agree with that. They just kind of look at the world in a different way. They look at it from sort of a lighthearted perspective, I think.
So if funny people think differently, then if we want to get more laughs, then we have to think the way a funny person does. And what I didn't know, the big aha for me, because I am still not a class clown, I'm still not considered a funny person, but I've developed some material that for my subject in front of a live audience, I've got humor that works and helps me deliver my message. So it is something that can be learned, but comedians don't want you to know the secrets. They don't want you to know that they actually, most of them have writers. They don't want you to know that there's formulas that they can use. And before we end, Jason, I'll give you one of my favorite formulas that anyone can use that most people don't even realize is a formula.
Yeah, great. I guess it's the protected secret as it is with magicians, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. There's an element of delivery. There's an element of just understanding your basic audience, because humor is actually a release of tension. You know, we're not talking about jokes. I'm not talking about being in front of an audience and telling knock-knock jokes or two guys walk into a bar. That's not humor. Those are jokes. I don't teach jokes. I don't teach jokes at my boot camp. I don't teach them in my DVD set. But I do teach humor. And humor is a release of tension. So one of the first principles that I try and teach people are these two questions, and I hope people write these two questions down because I think they're kind of the key to at least starting to understand how to tap this power of humor. And the questions are, number one, where is the tension? Where does the tension lie? For whatever you're trying to, like if you're teaching public speaking, part of the tension is the fear of public speaking. If you're teaching customer service, part of your tension is stupid customers.
Mm-hmm. Right.
If your audience is CEOs, their frustration are the VPs that work for them. If you're talking to VPs, it's the employees that work for those VPs. So first is, where's the tension? And then second is, how can I relieve that? How can I relieve that? And that's where the comic mind starts, by looking for ways to relieve stress and frustration. And the whole concept, like I wrote a book called Laugh and Get Rich. And the whole concept really stems from, I used to be in sales for 11 years with this man, worked in my department. His name was John Yates. And he actually worked half as many hours as everyone else, but yet he sold twice as much as everyone else. And I asked him, I said, what do you do differently? I mean, he didn't really seem to be that different. And here's what he said. He said, the days I don't make people laugh are the same days that I don't sell much either.
Interesting. That's a good point.
So he went for the laugh and the connection rather than making his focus the sale. And I think that's what presenters have to keep in mind. No, whether it's being funny or not, we got to connect first. It seems obvious, but if you're going up there and starting your presentation, blah, 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 I'm happy to be here, what an honor. That's blah.
Right,
That's
sure it is.
Puke. It's like, get me engaged, get my thoughts engaged, get me thinking. So even if it's not funny, just making that connection. And the other principle that I love talking about is, you and I just mentioned briefly Jeffrey Gitomer, who's the sales guru. And one of his quotes also helped me design this humor program that I have. And he said, at the end of laughter is the height of listening. At the end of laughter is the height of listening. So that's why for us as presenters, it's so important and so powerful, because we want people to listen. We want them to get our message.
Sure.
Well, if you're going to sell something or even persuade people to your point of view or your message or your idea, your product, whatever you're selling, we've got to get them engaged, and we've got to get them, if they're laughing, they're listening.
Yeah, that's interesting. I guess the end of the laughter is really almost like the pregnant pause that we as speakers use. The pregnant pause is like an exclamation point. It gives impact. It's like, boom, that's what you got to hear. And I love how you distinguish the difference between humor and jokes. That's an interesting distinction. And before you go on with some of this stuff, which is quite fascinating, I want to just back up for a second, if I can, Darren, and ask a really maybe almost all too obvious question. But I just want people to hear it from you.
Sure.
What's so important about humor? Why is it important for speakers and experts? And I mean, is it just what you said, the end of laughter is the height of listening, or are there more reasons?
It's not just that, but that's one of the points. It's the fact that the attention span this day and age is so tiny that if you don't have them laughing, if you don't have them engaged, you're just going to lose them. Their mind will start to wander. So we've been ruined by TV. So it's really about attention span. It's also, if you notice, whether it's businesses or speakers, if you're the meeting planner, put yourself in the place of the meeting planner, and you have speaker A, who's an expert, and we have speaker B, who's an expert, but happens to be funny. Who would you choose? You're the meeting planner.
They're going to choose the funny person
Absolutely.
All the time, yeah.
So speakers who are funnier earn more. Speakers who are funnier sell more in the back of the room. And people who are funnier get invited back more. It's just really, there's an old adage in speaking that says, you don't have to use humor unless you want to get paid.
Yeah. I think people trust people who are funny. And do you think the trust level is higher? I think maybe it is, huh?
I think trust and loyalty, because if you can make me laugh, that means you get me, you understand me, or in Avatar terms, you see me. And I think it is crucial. I think it's trust, I think it's loyalty, and I think it's attention. There's no way you can educate, entertain, or persuade unless you connect first. And I think it's just so crucial to the connection. That's why I disagree with it, but that's why the old term in speaking was, or the old philosophy was, always start with a joke. I think that's stupid, but that's where the idea came from to get that connection. And I think it's stupid because a joke, if it doesn't work, people sit there thinking, okay, why did he say that? Or even if it does work, a savvy audience is going to be, what does that have to do with this presentation anyway? So that's why, in going back to what you're saying about differentiating, I started in stand-up comedy, and then I found professional speaking, and I thought, oh my gosh, this is better. The audience is sober. They're going to pay me 10 times as much. I'm in. So I kind of converted over. But when people think I'm a comedian or something, I try to differentiate where a comedian, comedy is the message. As a humorist or a professional speaker who uses humor, humor is the medium.
Right. And that's a lot less pressure than a comedian, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So just give us a little more of a differentiate, some points of differentiation on the difference between a joke and humor. Because like you were saying, if a joke flops, you're dead, aren't you? I mean, you're Jay Leno doing the monologue, and frankly, I don't think Leno's that funny, to tell you the truth.
He's actually brilliant in stand-up, but when he has to do the Tonight Show, doing new material every single night, it's different. If you ever seen him doing stand-up, doing his own thing the way he wants, he's amazing.
I have not seen that.
Doing the opening monologue every night, I mean, I couldn't even think of coming up with new material every night, even if you had a team of writers.
Right, and he does, obviously. Yeah, that's hard. So any other points of differentiation between humor and telling jokes?
A lot of people, either come to my humor boot camp or they're interested in my DVD set, but they have the wrong philosophy. They come at it, they think, I just want to add humor to my presentation. And a great distinction from one of my other world champion buddies, Craig Valentine, is that he said, you don't add humor to a speech. You actually uncover it. And there's a big difference because we don't want to do what I call, or what Craig calls, detour humor, meaning you go off track just to get the laugh and then you have to come back. Because if it's not funny, you just put yourself dead in the water, and if you're a professional, you look like an idiot. But when you can uncover it in the story, then if you don't even get a laugh, it doesn't matter. It's okay. It's just part of the story.
I would think, though, that there are a lot of speakers who are listening to this now, and they're thinking, I'm just not a humorist. That's not my style. And they look at their material, and because I'm kind of doing that right now myself, and I'm looking at my material. And I do a lot of speaking engagements on economics, real estate investing, that kind of stuff. And I make the audience laugh a little bit, but I certainly wouldn't qualify as a humorist. Now, I'm probably telling myself that and making it true by saying it, so I shouldn't say that. I'm not sourcing the right thing. I don't know what's really that funny in my material. I mean, how do I uncover it? What do I do?
That's perfect, because you're not there to be a funny person, but any levity that you can bring to your subject differentiates you from the other speakers who speak about the same subject. So here's a philosophy to think about that I learned from stand-up. The problem is funny, the solution is serious.
Problem is funny, solution is serious.
So what we want to do is find the humor in the problem. What's the issue? That's the commonality that brings us in. Again, going back to the stress and the tension and the frustration. And the real key that I find it easiest to find humor is usually in the dialogue with the characters in my stories. That's really best. And that's one of the things that I see even just coaching speakers. I have a coaching camp and people come in and I work with them in a small group setting. And the first thing I'm teaching them is stop with the narration. Narration is a story that happened in the past. Bring us to the moment. It brings your speech to life. Even, the most extreme corporate sales presenters that I work with, I teach them it's the dialogue. Don't just tell me what happened. Let me hear the customer and how they were mad and what they said, and then let me hear the customer testimonial after you help them. Let me hear them speak, because then it's not you bragging, but it's also much more vibrant if I can hear the story as it happened rather than tell us what happened yesterday. It's flat and boring. So when we can uncover it looking at the humor, what else could have been said? So even if you're taking a little creative license, as long as the emotional part of the story is true and real, we need to, say, tweak it or Hollywoodize it to make it a little more interesting, a little more dramatic, so the message is received and anchored. That makes sense?
It does make sense. It does make sense. So go on with maybe some examples, some templates, some formulas. I think, not being an expert, but one of the real keys to humor is sort of the unexpected. It's kind of like you trick the listener or you trick the audience into, they think this will be the conclusion, but then you surprise them with that. And it's sort of that kind of 1-2 punch where you give them an unexpected outcome that you weren't really leading up to. Is that kind of one of the major formulas?
Yeah, here, I'll give you a couple secrets. Number one is that you have to understand all humor stems from tragedy. All humor stems from tragedy. One of my comedy mentors, his name was Dave Fitzgerald, he said, comedians are people who get paid to complain. If you think about it.
I do. You know what? Now that you say that, that's very true. I mean, and that's everywhere from Seinfeld to the stand-up people I've seen at the Improv over the years. They complain about stuff.
Absolutely. Yeah, right. If you look at opening monologues, if you just think for a second, forget the comedy, but step back for a second and say, what are they talking about? Well, they're talking about the stresses, the frustrations, the stupid people. Well, okay, if that's what they're talking about, maybe then we all need to take that lesson away. The second secret is exactly what you said, and here's how I define it, is that my comedy secret number 2 is people laugh when their minds are successfully tricked.
Right, yeah.
Laugh when their minds are successfully tricked. And that's exactly what you were saying, just said in a few different words, but it's taking your audience down one path and changing the direction on them. But even though it's not about jokes, it's still understanding how humor works. That it's like the best analogy I ever heard was George Carlin. George Carlin said it's like a train going down the tracks. You can tell exactly where the train is going, so you can see the tracks in front of us. But we laugh when that train is derailed. And that's the whole key. So if we take a definition from stand-up, just to understand the change of direction, a setup is actually creating an expectation. A punchline or a laugh line is the change of direction. So the better you are at humor is the better you can create the expectation, change the direction. So let me give you an example. And here's, again, what I mean by tying into tension. So comedy secret number 3 is that there are templates and formulas that comedians don't want you to know about, because then you'd realize that they're not as brilliant in the moment as they appear to be. They're brilliant and they work their butts off to make it look like they're just winging it. But let me give you an example. This is a formula that I call redefining humor. So here's a situation. So let's go to an exact speaking situation. I'm speaking at the Rio. Have you ever been to the Rio?
Sure. Yeah, a couple times.
Okay. Have you ever spoken at an event there?
No.
Well, if you've ever been to an event at the Rio, you would know that the meeting rooms are like 20 or 30-minute walk from the main towers where the rooms are.
Right. I bet you're going to complain about that now, aren't you?
You're good. Yeah. You're good, Jason. You're on the pulse.
Trying to be a good student.
Well, you are. You're a good listener,
yeah.
Which makes you a good interviewer, and most people aren't. Very cool.
Thank you.
So the Rio. So here I am. I'm speaking at a convention and conference for a company called Contours Express, and they're the competition to Curves. So they're all franchise owners, mostly women, 99% women, of these workout places and retail shops. So all these franchise owners in this room. So I always look for any specific event. Not only what's the frustration of the audience, but also what's the common frustration of that event right there now. So there's 2 different frustrations. Their frustration in general and their frustration of the conference. So I just listened, and I always get to a convention or a conference as early as I possibly can. You know, if I'm coming from another conference, you know, I do my best. But if I can be there for the whole conference, I want to, because I want to see what other people say and what's going on. I want to be on the pulse. And the thing that I kept hearing over and over again was these women were saying, oh my gosh, my feet are killing me. I should have worn my sneakers, these heels. Oh, such a long walk and blah, blah, blah. So I kept hearing it again and again. And we're not looking for one person. We're looking for the common frustrations. So here's redefining formula, and I'll explain the formula after I tell you what happened. So I got up on stage and I said, wow, this isn't it? And it's a beautiful hotel, don't get me wrong. It was just the frustration of the walk. And to get from one to another, you walk down this long hallway. It's forever. And then you take a right, and then you go down another long hallway, take another right, and then you go down another long hallway. So I get up on stage and I say, hey, welcome to this convention. Isn't this great? And they really were having a great time. So all big round of applause. And this hotel, the Rio, this is beautiful. Another round of applause. I said, I don't know if you know this or not, but Rio is actually a Native American term. It means long flippin' hallway.
Right.
Okay. And so, I mean, even just your laugh right there, it doesn't have to be brilliant. And you're also obviously not in the frustration end. So that's different as well. That would actually heighten the laughter. So you got the joke and you weren't even in on the frustration. The power of this is now I had them in the palm of my hands. Why? Because I knew what they were all thinking. only because I looked for it. Now, let me explain. If you're listening to this and you have a pen and paper, let me explain exactly how this works. Now, here's the formula. First, we take the term, which is Rio. Now, if you're in customer service, if you're in real estate, you could use a term like REO if you were talking to other real estate investors. So you pick a term that the audience is used to, they hear all the time, and we're going to redefine it. Or maybe maybe it's a new term to them that we're teaching them. So we take the term, then you say literally, which is then put a blank there, term. So I always look for, okay, what kind of language could this word come from? So Rio, I just said Native American, but sometimes you could say, which is a Latin term, meaning. I was just with Jeffrey Gitomer this weekend, and I did one with his group, and they all know him and they love him, and he's Jewish, and he picks on himself about being Jewish. So I said, is a Yiddish term meaning. So you take the term, which is a blank term, and then we redefine it based on the frustration of the audience.
Let me take a brief pause. We'll be back in just a minute.
What's great about the shows you'll find on jasonhartman.com is that if you want to learn more about investing in real estate in different markets, there's a show for that. If you want to learn 17 ways rich people think and act differently, there's a show for that. If you want to know how to get paid to borrow, there's a show for that. And if you'd like to know why Amsterdam doesn't take dollars or why pools are for fools, there are even shows for that. Yep, there's a show for just about anything. Only from jasonhartman.com. Or type in Jason Hartman in the iTunes store.
That's a great formula. So it could be the hotel, the event location. It could be a term that's common to the industry of your audience. Or is it always a term, or is it just sort of like a general problem? Or
what you want to do now, there's a lot of formulas. I wish, it took me 2 days to go over all the formulas and templates I created that came right from the stand-up world, but it depends, and there are many different ways to use it. But the beautiful thing is, especially if this was a term and you were talking to another real estate association, if it works in one place, it can work in another, and it can work in another. So this one was just for that event, but I think it's even better if you can have one in general. So let me just give you another example, because sometimes it's better to get your hands around it. Jeffrey Gitomer, if you don't know Jeffrey, he's a sales speaker. He's hysterical, but he's also like right in your face and tells it like it is, and his audience knows that. So the one I used when I was teaching them humor was, I said, I don't know if you know this or not, but Gitomer is a Yiddish word meaning brutally honest, what you need to hear whether you like it or not. So to them, knowing him, it was just a fun way to look at it because he's right in your face telling it like it is. Now, I'll give you the same exact formula. This may be a little strong, so forgive the language here, but this comes from Robin Williams, where he used the same exact formula. And what he did is he redefined divorce. And he said, yes, divorce, from the Latin word meaning to rip a man's genitals out through his wallet.
That's not funny. But
and the reason I like to give those three examples is like, you think Robin Williams is just brilliant, and he is, and his delivery is brilliant. What a comedian has to do is every 10 or 15 seconds has a laugh. You and I, when we're up on stage, we don't need that. But if we can take some of these principles and define it to the humor and the frustrations of our audience, and we can use it over and over again, we make one little line and just build on that. It's beautiful. Anyway.
Okay, that's excellent. So can you share one more formula? We don't have much time left, but one more. If you can give us another idea, that'd be great.
Sure. Well, I'll give you another one from stand-up. And this is actually one of the first principles that I learned in the stand-up comedy world. And it's about self-deprecating humor. But bear with me for a second. I'll tell you how it works, but then I'll show you how to make it even more professional. So in the stand-up world, we take our heritage, okay, where we came from. But we take just a left and a right. So we take literally, I'm half French and I'm half Polish. I come from Boston, so in Boston there's a lot of comedians who are half Irish and half Italian. But what you do is you take who you are, and if you're, three nationalities, you just take two for the sake of this exercise, and you would take all of the basic, let's say, stereotypes. So let me just ask you real quick. If you think of Polish, what comes to mind?
Frankly, I have always felt, and I'm not just saying this, that was a very unfair stereotype that Polish people aren't very smart. All of these, how many Polish people does it take to screw in a light bulb? I tell you, I was in Warsaw, Poland, and first of all, I met a lot of smart people, but beautiful women over there. Wow, I was impressed. I mean, one of the best places on the planet. Anyway, that's the stereotype, of course.
So if you think of Polish, what comes to mind? So making a quick list, back in the day when I wrote the joke, there were a lot of Polish jokes out there. So it was present in mind to a lot of people. But if you even just think now, you think kielbasy, you think polkas, you think, so you make a list of all the things that could relate or the stereotypes of Polish. And you make a list out. And the comedy formula is it takes 10 to get 2. So you at least come up with 10. And the best stuff is usually at the bottom because it's not as top of mind. Then you take a list of French. So when you think of French, what do you think of?
Haughty, snobby, kind of difficult.
So the top terms could be romance or romantic, could be snobby.
Oh, I'm sorry. I by the way, forgive me, audience. I was not thinking of anything positive. I thought you were looking for negative associations.
No, absolutely. No, positive,
but
negative.
Of course, the French, just to stick up for them, they have the most beautiful language on earth. They basically invented style along with the Italians. Architecture, great stuff.
Negative's good, too.
Yeah, okay, I was thinking
escargot.
Right. Oh, I don't know if that's so positive, but okay.
But anyway, see, this humor we're creating about ourselves, so it's okay if it's negative. It's actually better if it's negative. So we make a list of one and then the other. And then what we do is the formula for this one is, well, let me tell you a little bit about myself. And you might not start with this as a speaker, but it might be after your opening story and your questions that bring the audience in. So it's after that where this one would fit better. But I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I'm half French and half Polish, which means I have a very romantic love life, but it's a joke.
See, that's good.
Okay? Or it could be, so you're looking for the things on the lists that you could combine. What would happen if we combine them? Like a lot of Irish Italian comedians used to say, I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I'm half Irish and half French, which means I like to get drunk and beat myself up.
Okay,
but I mean, I could say, for the French-Polish thing, I could say I love to eat escargot every time I did the polka or something like that. But you test a few things and see what works best for you.
And you said 10 to get 2? Is that
you have a list of 10, and then out of your list of 10, it'll give you 2 good ideas to test. You test those 2 ideas, and then you use the one that works better. So now let me show you real quickly how to take that and make it more professional. So now instead of French and Polish, we could take I'm a Toastmaster and an engineer, or I'm a speaker and I'm a real estate guru, or I'm in real estate. And then we take the stereotypes of those, and then we would combine them. So the formula is I'm half blank and half blank, which means, and then you combine the 2. So Toastmasters, for example, like if it was half Toastmaster, half engineer, which means every time I lay out a blueprint, I clap.
Okay,
I applaud
right.
myself. That.
Okay.
I'm doing it off the top of my head to keep it real. But if you could spend 15, 20 minutes working on something like this, you could create a joke just from what I've told you right now, could use again and again and again for years to come.
Sure you could. That's good. Yeah, because the first part that you mentioned, the self-deprecating stuff, that's got to be, I mean, we live in a very politically correct world. I don't have to tell you that. That's got to be self-deprecating. You can't use that really, I mean, comedians do on the stand-up circuit, but not in the sort of corporate world, that kind of stuff, unless it's about you, right? It's safe when it's about you.
Well, it's okay if it's about you. The other thing is, notice what I did with the Rio. I didn't make fun of people. Well, here's an example, another example. It's what I call the registration desk principle that I teach speakers. If you're looking for tension or stress, where do people complain? Convention or conference, they all go to the registration desk. So why not go ask the people working the registration desk? I was doing this one presentation in San Antonio, Texas, and all the breakout sessions were in one area. But there's one specific meeting room, I'll always remember, it was called Hacienda G, was really off the beaten path from everything else, and no one could find it. So as soon as I hear that common frustration, ding, 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 possible humor goes off in my head. I got up on stage, and all I said was, if anyone's looking for Hacienda G, I didn't even have to say anything else. They all started roaring.
Because they all knew that was the inside joke. They've all had that.
But then after I got the laugh, I said, it's really easy. All you do is go down this hallway, go through the kitchen, go down Crockett Avenue about a half a mile, take a right at the Alamo. And at this point, they were just rolling because they were all in on that frustration. So that's an event-based one, but I think it's even better if you can get industry-specific based humor. And again, it doesn't have to be rip-roaring because we don't have that pressure. It just has to even put a smile or a giggle on their face just to create that connection. That's the power of humor, creating the connection.
Yeah, and that's the magic of it, absolutely. Well, so those are some excellent ideas. Tell us a little bit more about what you do and what you offer so people can learn more.
Well, thanks. I'll tell you real brief about how this all came about is I used to own a Subway sandwich shop, and I was driving down the road listening to Brian Tracy, and it was a motivational tape of Brian Tracy, and he said, "What would you dare to dream if you knew you wouldn't fail?" And I thought, I'd be a comedian. How cool would that be? The only problem was I wasn't funny. And I just made this determination that I was just going to try it once because I didn't want to regret later in life not trying. So I committed to doing a one open mic night. But I didn't even know what an open mic night was. So I went and asked a comedian for advice, and he told me to go get this book by Judy Carter. So I went and got the book, and I studied for 2 months. I went to open mic nights, and I watched people go up, and they were horrible. And I thought, well, I can do that. I can go up and drool on myself. It was horrible, but it inspired me. Well, that first night I got one laugh, and it was a mistake. And I was bit by the bug, and I said, I'm going to figure this out. So I took every comedy class I could. I got on stage every night. I joined Toastmasters. I joined 4 Toastmasters Club, all just to be funnier on stage. And then I found speaking. So what I've done is I created this thing called the Humor Boot Camp, where I took the principles of stand-up comedy and brought them over to clean corporate speaking, to help get speakers get their message across. So I have a live boot camp coming up in January with Judy Carter, the woman who wrote that book that I first started with. So it's like very cool. I've never shared the stage with her before. She's awesome. She's sold so many of those books because of my success and me telling my story. But I also took my humor boot camp, and I've had people overseas who wanted to go but didn't want to fly all the way over. So I brought in a camera crew, and I videotaped it, and I now have a 10 DVD set called Get More Laughs by Next Week. And this is a 10 DVD set, just like you're sitting in this live boot camp, where it gives you 17 laughter-generating exercises that I walk you through. And it's like you're with the boot camp, there's 44 people in the audience, and you go through the same exercise as them, and then you watch them get up on stage right then and there and deliver what they came up with, which will give you more ideas. It's a powerful program that I think will change your thinking about humor forever.
How much does that program cost?
The live boot camp is $795. The DVD set is $495.
Great. By the way, we're going to put that all up on our site for you, and it'll link to yours as well. So that'll be at speakingofwealth.com/offers. That's speakingofwealth.com/offers.
Awesome.
And what else would you like people to know about this extremely important subject, Darren? Just to kind of wrap it all up. I mean, it's really the magic. By the way, I got to make a comment. It amazes me that we have to, as speakers and trainers and communicators, when teaching to adults, we have to use so many gambits and so many things to keep their attention, like be great at humor and be interactive and all of this kind of stuff. Whereas I don't remember any of my school teachers when I was in grade school or college doing any of this stuff. But are adults, are they really harder do they have shorter attention spans than kids in a way?
Well, I don't think it's adults versus kids. I think it's now versus 10 years ago. Because I wouldn't want to be in front of a youth audience now. Oh my gosh, one of my buddies speaks.
They'd be texting on their phones,
oh,
and you couldn't keep their attention. Yeah.
So I just think it's in general. So every time your cell phone works, appreciate technology, because when you're on stage, it's killed our audiences. It's made their attention span the size of a gnat. So it's difficult, but at the same time, if you're willing to work hard to learn the tools and techniques of people who are great speakers, no matter who you learn, I don't care who you learn from, but commit to learning those advanced techniques, whether it's humor or storytelling. Find a speaker coach. Find someone you can trust and work with to help make you better. Because now it's not even the differentiator. Now it's about survival. You know, the speaking industry changed after September 11th. So it used to be, okay, the funny people were different and differentiator. Now it's almost like you have to just to compete. So commit to your craft. If you care about your message, commit to your craft. Understand that humor is something that can be learned. It's not just about, okay, he's funny and you're not. There are techniques that you can use, and appreciate the little tiny victories. I spoke this weekend. It was good. It wasn't amazing. I didn't get tons of laughs, but I get some. the more I learn it, the better I get. The laughs are bigger now than they used to be years ago, but it's really about the connection. So if I learned it, anybody can learn it. And you can go online on my website, and there's a video clip where you can put the video clip on your website of how bad I was when I first started. That will inspire you.
That takes a lot of guts to do that, Darren. I'm impressed. You put that up, huh?
Not about looking good. It's about inspiring people and giving them hope.
Excellent, excellent. Well, Darren LaCroix, thank you so much for being with us today and sharing some of this insight into the magic of humor. I hope that you didn't break the code of the humorous too badly, so your colleagues won't put a hit out on you, but we really appreciate that. It's such an important skill, and again, some special stuff for all our listeners at speakingofwealth.com/offers, and stay funny, my friend.
All right. Thank you, Jason.
Want to know what you've missed in the Creating Wealth series? Well, here's your opportunity with Jason's 5-book set. That's shows 1 through 100 through digital download. You save $288 by getting this 5-book set. Learn all of the advanced strategies for wealth creation. For more details, go to jasonhartman.com. Copyright the Hartman Media Company. For publication rights and interviews, please email media@jasonhartman.com. This show offers very general information. Opinions of guests are their own. Nothing contained herein should be considered personalized, personal, financial, investment, legal, or tax advice. Every investor's strategy and goals are unique. You should consult with a licensed real estate broker or agent or other licensed investment, tax, and/or legal advisor before relying on any information contained herein. Information is not guaranteed. Please call 714-820-4200 and visit www.jasonhartman.com for additional disclaimers, disclosures, and questions.